Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you for coming to my channel. Okay everyone, we're back on the ground floor in my fish room looking at the low tech, very low tech 5.5 gallon Petco Special. I've called this tank the El Cheapo Magico before, the Petco Special as I just referenced it, and a number of other things during its short, sweet life in my fish room here in Chicago. Right now it's stabilized. I haven't had my hands in this tank for many weeks and things are good. Well, I should rephrase that. I'm always pulling some of that hornwort that you see up top there out to keep it from overtaking the fish tank and clogging up the real estate, the swimming space for the primary fish species in here, which is the celestial pearl danio. I'm trying to navigate some intense reflections from the light setup I have here. I have it on a slant so it can kind of shoot down on an angle, catching the pothos up top, which is doing marvelous. Look at that. Just a perfect frame around the tank. And part of that is aquascaping, and part of that is using immersed plants, terrestrial plants, I should say, outside the aquarium to help create a nice kind of curvy frame for the square, for the rectangle that is your fish tank. The pothos, the vines there are doing super well, and why wouldn't they be? This fish tank has probably got the most organics and nitrates of all my tanks, and maybe not so much nitrates. The levels are fairly reasonable, but nevertheless for my fish room it's on the high side, and that's okay because the fish have grown up with that and they're used to it. And nitrates around 40 ppm, while that might sound ghastly to purists in the hobby, it's a pretty reasonable number, especially when your eyes tell you everything's okay, in that I never have deaths in this tank. As a matter of fact, I have more births than I know what to do with from the Neocaridina. And let's move in and maybe have a look at those because they're pretty cool, and there's so many. Now that's an Amano shrimp, and I don't need those in here anymore, but I did put a few in early on and they've stayed quite fat and happy. You also see some Otocinclus. There's one on the branch there, and another one just peeped under the Anubias leaf, and they're doing really well too. So a fish like that would not tolerate poor conditions. Otocinclus are frankly sensitive if you disrupt their living conditions too much, or you buy them sick, and many of them do come in sick to the LFS, which is why some fish stores don't even sell them anymore. I've been told on more than one occasion that they no longer carry Otocinclus because they all come in sick or dead, and they're tired of the losses, both from a fish perspective and honestly a financial perspective. It's just not good business to import 100 fish when 80 of them are swimming upside down and sideways or just collapsed. It's terrible for everything. And that was a tangent. And in other words, the canary in the coal mine could be an Otocinclus in this aquarium, and they're all doing fine. Neocaridina, especially these cherries, and which many of them have reverted to the wild form, which looks like small Amano shrimps, just kind of a gray brown. They're really not particularly beautiful at all, but they're so pragmatic and functional and interesting that having a ton of them just flitting about, reproducing, helping me maintain this extremely low-tech fish tank more than makes up for their lack in beauty. Now there's a black rose. It's similar to a blue dream, but I remember getting a bag of black rose shrimp, like 12 of them at a swap a year ago, and there's one there, and that's an adult. And I'm sure he's reproducing with these cherry shrimp, and over time, well, black and red forms a pretty nasty color, honestly. You see that color form there? Not a brilliant picture, but there's some black and some brown and red, and anyway, that's what happens, and that's what happens rather quickly if you have happy Neocaridina and you mix them. In other tanks, I try to keep the strains pure. I'm working with Blue Dream and Blue Jelly and Bloody Mary shrimp, all easy to maintain, but not in this tank. And look at that beautiful Autosynclus. I wonder what variety that is. It's got that great black spot on the tail. If anybody knows, let me know. You know, Autosynclus, not to go back and talk about them, but there's way more than just one kind. And many times people buy different kinds and they don't know it. I've done some research, and that's where I'm coming up with that factoid. But sometimes you might have more than one kind of these classic Autosynclus, even within that specific species. And that one that I was showing you, I think he's working on glass right now, had a particularly bold and striking pattern, a lot more white on him than, say, like this guy right here, which looks more typical. They're all great, though. Autosynclus is a must-have in the fish room. Almost all my tanks have some, and you know, despite their fragility in the early going, I think they're well worth the investment. A while back, I took a bunch of this dragonstone and just formed the classic L. There's the top of the L, and then it works its way that way, or the inverted hockey stick, as I often call it, and stuck this Anubias, several plants within the crevices of the L shape, and you can see what I did there. And I haven't moved them since, and they're doing great. No Anubias rot, no algae on the leaves, no dark spots or holes, not really, not at all. So yet another marker that the aquarium is in a good place. One thing I did is I just took some sticks, like the extra, you know, when I go to the LFS and buy something significant, they often have barrels of just sticks. And I have a good relationship with some of these proprietors, and I just say, can I grab a few of these? And so you see those two sticks back there? That's likely where those came from. And I literally just wedged them into the dragonstone, just like the Anubias, until I got a formation that I liked. I used even smaller sticks and botanicals to litter the bottom, and litter's a decent word for it. I just threw them willy-nilly onto the bottom. Leaves, cones, and sticks. Now the leaves and cones have deteriorated over time, creating a lovely mulm, which if I used a turkey baster, it would just blow a plume of organic debris into the water. But right now it's settled, and the shrimps just go bonkers on it. You can see everything. Look at all those different kinds. A mono, wild form Neocaridina, black rose, some runt cherry shrimp, some other, you know, what many would call, but this is their happy place, and I'm happy to give it to them. Some of the places those shrimp originally came from, I bought some invertebrates from Tony at Phillips Tank Works. I think that's the name of the website. What a great individual. He actually came to my house. He's sort of blown up a little bit. He's been on Father Fish, and he just offers scuds and organics and cull shrimps and a few species of snails and fish, last I checked. maybe some more things. I know his business was good and he was trying to expand it, but he came over to my house with his lovely wife and we did some trading, and I put those, everything he gave me, some scuds, some neocaridina, and whatever came in the bag of bugs as he called it, and that went in here over a year ago. And even though I've changed the tank around, you know, those populations will rise and fall. I don't see any scuds right now, but that's not to say they're not in here. And I've got plenty of life in here. There's an interesting looking big cherry shrimp. Obviously there's snails. Well, I don't see any, trust me. And then the CPDs, and they're doing great. Now that one there, one of the things that happens when you buy celestial pearl danios is they're bred so much within the same group that they do get an inferior gene profile, and so you might get a humped shape to them. And I don't like that. Maybe he doesn't like that. Maybe he doesn't even care. It's an otherwise healthy fish. You can see even as the camera tries to focus all the little particulates in the water and a slight film of powder algae on the glass, which if I was a good noodle, I would have cleaned that glass to make this just a little bit better, and so I beg your pardon. There's a snail right there. I believe that's a Malaysian trumpet snail. That's a snail that I generally don't like to keep, but it's never gonna overpopulate this tank. There's not really the kind of substrate they desire, so that's a primary reason. They can be an infestation more so than any snail I know, including the ram's horn or bladder snail, and when they are in massive numbers, it's more creepy looking. I don't know how else to put it, but you know, they're really cool in and of themselves, so I'm happy he or she is in there. But the scape, if you want to call it that, is holding together nicely. I have a black background which does darken the whole thing, and I might try a lighter background. I know I've had a lighter background, and for whatever reason I had changed it to this black. Maybe it was to try to get the celestial pearl danio super comfortable. Maybe it was because before this pothos inhibited the light, it was very bright. Those are likely reasons. This tank is heated, but it's a set 78 or so, and I haven't messed with that or checked the thermometer in ages. I can see the red lines and the green, and that's good enough for me and good enough for the fish in here. And I have a simple sponge filter in the back, and I haven't really addressed that in quite some time either. You know, a lot of people, it's trending on the socials, like to talk about, I don't want to do anything to my tanks. And I'm not one of those guys. I mean, you know, my motto is always keep your hands in the tank, which is the antithesis of what some of my fellow YouTubers are prescribing. But I like to constantly be dithering and tinkering. I'm a dither fish in my fish room. And I seem to, you know, bring out the best in my aquariums. Sometimes I go too far, I make mistakes. And might create a spike if I rustle too much of the substrate in one aquarium, or you know, but by and large, my activities lead to a better experience for all the creatures, including the plants, especially the plants. I'm a big plant guy, and while you can leave them alone and they will grow and grow and grow, you know, any gardener will tell you you have to prune, and pruning is not quite the word we use. We use trim, but, or, you know, or pulling plants, but you got to work your garden. You just do, and nothing's different in a planted aquarium. That hornwort is awesome, and it's even arguably interesting when it overruns a tank, that full green, like a pearlweed tank. But the celestial pearl danios, you know, they like some real estate to swim around in. Any fish would. And if you let the plants get too extreme in their growth, you're going to inhibit not only your sight lines, perhaps your viewing experience. You might like, and I do like, an intensely planted tank, a super jungle. But over time, I want to find a balance. Anubias is never going to be a culprit. It's such a slow grower. I have seen it grow into stalks as thick as bamboo, the rhizome, and you know, but you just chop that and you've got another $40 mother plant. What else is in this aquarium? I've mentioned most of the creatures. There's actually a couple young bristlenose. I don't see either of them right now. And so if someone says bristlenose are too big for a 5-gallon, they're right. And they're even right in my 100% right. But yet we haven't seen one in 15 minutes. So clearly they have some real estate to play. And as I speak, I'm going to zoom in on one of them. He's still on the small side, but you can see him right there, obvious. I got those when they were I have 2 of them, and they were 1-inch fingerlings. I'm not sure why I bought them or what the deal was there, but I put them in here. They're such great algae eaters, and if you're not worried about an occasional leaf getting munched on, they really work in an aquarium that's supernatural like this, that's very full of organics, and the aesthetic is more natural and organic. Then that fish does a great job for you. In a super pristine aquascape, and if it's chewing on a soft leaved plant, you know, that might stress you out. That has not been my experience 90% of the time, and I have plecos in many of my tanks, different kinds, and most of the time they leave most of my plants alone. That being said, I'm aware of the issue, and in an aquarium like this, it's a non-issue. And see, he's working away. Honestly, all the creatures in here are working. They're all working fish and invertebrates. The snails, the shrimp, the plecos. The only creatures that don't work are the celestial pearl danios. I'm sure they're spawning in the morning. That's when CPDs spawn. But I'm sure, given all the life I've just talked about, that the eggs and or fry don't last. I've not seen any fry at the top. I sort of stopped looking because, you know, there's just a lot going on in this aquarium, and it would take a long time to spot a little sliver, and I wouldn't do anything about it anyway. I don't have another tank to put them in. I'm not a fish breeder, although I love to see my fish spawn. It's another marker of a super healthy tank. There's kind of a funky side view. You see the 2 pieces of dragonstone. I just put one on top of the other to form that arrowhead shape, which makes a lot more sense from the front of the tank. Ta-da! Which is the primary viewing spot for this aquarium. Now granted, I'm on the lower portion, so there really is no brilliant viewing spot. I came down here to be with this tank and to share it with you. Excuse me. I've spoke about how previous iterations of this aquarium, I had it as a wall stead at one point, and it kind of worked without CO2. And then I put in a bunch of fry from my live bears tank. They grew really fast, and catching them out disrupted all the plants in the wall stead, and catching them out also frustrated me. It wasn't worth it to grab a bag of 30 and go to my LFS and try to trade them and then do that every couple weeks. I think that can be a lot of fun, but I wasn't into it as much as I thought I would be. So I changed my scheme and did an aquarium in keeping with sort of the classic style. This is sort of where a lot of us start. When we really want to get serious, the 101 is this nature style aquarium. The only oddity here is I didn't use any sand, gravel, or aqua soil. So it's a epiphyte in stone on glass. And that's a slight variation. But there's so much mulm and debris at the bottom, it creates its own substrate, just like it would in nature. And over time, if I do nothing with it, it would break down and form a kind of soft, powdery sand, which is not the right word because there wouldn't be any rocks in it, not really. Some clay from this little particles from the dragonstone, so I guess some rocks. So what do you think, folks? I know it's not a high-tech aquarium like most of my others, but it's been a real joy showing it to you and talking about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Challenge me, ask me questions. I can take it, I love it. And although I haven't had my hands in this tank, I have to close the video by saying always keep your hands in yours, and ciao for now.